Welcome to Balcony Brew Review, COVID-19 pandemic shelter in place, podcast 3. I am Larry Hawley. Paul M. Banks joins me. Paul, say hello.
Hello.
Hope you're doing well. Hope you're holding in. How are you doing? Are you holding up well? Are you holding in?
I am strictly adhering to the guidelines and feeling pretty good.
Good. I'm doing the same. Uh, as we now enter, I believe we're right about week 4. Let's have some fun here. Raise the glass. Paul, what are you drinking?
I am drinking Fist City by Revolution Brewing. It's 5.5% ABV Chicago Pale Ale. I'm not a very big into IPAs kind of guy, but this one isn't too bitter. It's not too sour, so I'm enjoying it. It's more citrusy. And with Revolution, my drink of choice is usually the Cross of Gold. I do like a light Pilsner like that. And of course, it has the historical connotations, which I love, having its name after William Jennings Bryan. But yeah, the Fist City, that's kind of going to be one of the themes we're going to have on the show. Is we're gonna try to support the local guys. So I figured I'd raise one for them tonight.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing too. Mine is Maple Woods. I love Maplewood Brewing. I've never featured them on the Balcony Brew Review. I finally did this time, and it's actually fitting. The beer I'm drinking is the Chill Air from Maplewood, 5.5% alcohol by volume. It is a Vienna lager, and it is quite tasty. It's light as a lager you would expect, but it's got a lot of flavor to it. It actually, I call it, it's an all-season beer, sure, but it really would work well, I think, in the spring and work exceptionally well, I think, in the fall. Very good, very light tasting. You get some flavor to it. It's pretty outstanding. I didn't expect anything less. I'm a big fan of Maplewood, and they have delivered again with the Vienna Lager. This is really good if you want to have a couple of beers. This is one of them you can have. It's not too heavy. You can enjoy a few without knocking yourself 10 feet back. So I really enjoy this. Another fantastic. If you haven't been to Maplewood, I certainly suggest it. They are taking takeout orders at the moment for beer. So if you can get over there, I suggest it. MaplewoodBrew.com is their web address. Um, Paul, let's start it off. That thing you brew. Give me something, movie, song, musician, book, whatever. What are you thinking right now? What's on your mind?
I my middle name is Maximilian, and in my family, everyone calls me Max because my father is a Paul as well. So I always wondered why have I never seen the Mad Max movies, and I finally did on American Movie Classics. Now I didn't know Mad Max 2 was branded the Road Warrior in America, so that one I missed. But I did see Mad Max and Beyond Thunderdome, and of course the Thunderdome was the one I really, really wanted to see because I do remember that movie as a kid being a big deal, and arguably my favorite pop song of all time, or favorite rap song, or just favorite song, or whatever is California Love by Dr. Dre and Tupac.
Oh, I love that song.
And yeah, it's a great song. And do you remember the video?
I don't as much. I don't remember as much, but yeah, I don't remember the video as much, and I don't know why.
Thunderdome theme for that.
Yeah, I just remember the opening. I really like just the California love. It's kind of got that up and down, dun 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 dun. It's just got a really good opening sequence from a musical standpoint. It was pretty fantastic. I love that song. I actually listened to it the other night, very very randomly.
Oh, I listen to it all the time, and the video is has a Beyond Thunderdome theme. So I'm glad I got to see the movie finally. And the one time I got a chance to do a set at the Laugh Factory, I chose California Love as my theme music, which is pretty cool. So,
Fantastic. Well done. Oh, well
but
done, man.
yeah, I felt the first Mad Max was weird, but not weird enough. It was too relatable. I wanted something more escapist and strange, and that's why I thought Thunderdome was a lot better because it was definitely far out there, and it definitely had the post-apocalyptic vibe and theme to it was very present. Versus the first one, I guess it's supposed to be set in the future, but it didn't really have that post-apocalypse thing going with it.
Yeah, you know what, man? I hate to admit this. I've never seen him.
You've
I
never
have to.
seen any of them?
No, you know what? I have this issue where I do happen to forget stuff a lot like that. So I no, I don't remember it. I've never seen it. So yeah, I've never seen it. I'm gonna have to get on that. You know, that's the thing. I should probably take more advantage of that because I always tend to like when it comes to movies, I always tend to either not see something or not. Like I've never seen the Godfather movies, but yet I think I'd really like them. I guess I just get lazy when it comes to seeing stuff. I mean, I finally saw Mad Men 5 years after it went off the air, so it's pretty much par for the course for me.
Well, that's kind of what this time is all about now, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's actually, I mean, it is. What is this time about? That's kind of where I was going to go to a little bit later in the show, but I guess for me, I was trying to think anything else for you for that, where it comes to anything else sports pop culture wise on your mind this week.
Well, I wanted to celebrate my first article in Sports Illustrated.
Congratulations, sir. By the way, how did it feel to be an SI? Because as you know, most people dream of being an SI. I don't know if you did. I did. And I
Yeah,
know
of
a lot of
course I
other people
did.
did. What did it mean to be an SI? Could try to put that into words for me.
It's been a while since I've had something where family, friends, texts, emails, everybody, it was the unifier. It was universal. Everyone could relate to that, whether they're into sports or not. And they all, congratulated me on. It was one of those things where everybody chimed in, and that was really cool because yeah, I thought of like 14-year-old me and what a big deal that was.
Were you happy with it?
Oh, I thought I did a great job with it.
Good.
It goes again with the California thing because it's on Sports Illustrated's Dodgers website, and the guy I know who runs it, who's in the Internet Baseball Writers Association of America, it I wrote about the Sox Orioles game that was played behind closed doors.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I remember. God, I remember that. That's how. That seems like about 30 years ago now. It's only five. I think it was 5 years ago. Well, not quite 5 years. I think it turns five probably. I want to say it was like
It
around April
turns five,
23rd.
but yeah, it's on April 29th.
Okay, yeah. So it was late April. I remember.
And it was something very timely, and it relates. And then I did a podcast on it shortly after because now you have the Arizona plan. And a little sneak preview here. My next article for Sports Illustrated, my next article for SI is on. I took the Arizona plan and I applied it to Southern California,
Nice.
and I came up with how you could do it. Because I mean, it seems so naturally. Think Arizona, yeah, all those spring training stadiums and everything, but in California you have all those minor league teams and then you have all those universities, so you could do it there too pretty easily.
Yeah, I think there's so many places you could do that. I mean, I've tried to think of it. I mean, how if you don't have fans and you don't need a lot of infrastructure, you can open up the parks that you can use for it. Now you're going to have some TV stuff. You have to have some viable options to televise these games because the televising of these games is going to be crucial. But you can, without fans, give yourself a lot of options as to where you play baseball. College stadiums, some high schools have just beautiful ballparks. There were a couple when I was in North Carolina. You could easily put a television crew in there and make it look really good. I think that's the one thing. When you take fans out of the equation, you can play these games like where you want. So like the NBA, if they decided, because you look at the NBA standings right now, the Bucks and the Lakers are far and away. I want to say the Bucks were maybe 5, 6 games up, and the Lakers were maybe 6, 7 games up in the conference standings. If you wanted to play the NBA Finals, you could play that anywhere. You could play it at the Advocate Center. You just need a place you can put in a couple of TV cameras. You don't have to put in for fans. You can do those things. So, your idea of these ballparks where you can play them, as long as you have hotel rooms and you have some infrastructure there, you can play these. You can get really creative as to where you play them. So I think that some of the southern states who are going to have good weather have a shot to really be able to do that. So I am curious to see what baseball looks at. It's very interesting stuff. I'm excited to read your second article. I'm curious what California will have to offer.
Well, you start out with the fact that you've got 3 major league stadiums in the area instead of 1. San Diego and Anaheim. You've got the nation's second biggest media market, which is a way to kind of compensate for having no fans. Obviously, we're talking about television, and you don't need any kind of special production for that, just basic television. But it is LA, and showbiz is what they do, so that works. And then I remember Pepperdine had the most gorgeous, like their ballpark. Their team plays next to a mountain that overlooks the ocean, and I'm like, well, you got to have Pepperdine in there, and then you throw in like the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes and some of these minor league teams, and you could do. Here's the real kicker. In Phoenix, from June to September, you're talking night game only.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you're not talking about 100-degree. You're talking 110s. You're talking some really, really hot temperature. I mean, you're talking like it would be pretty hard to play even for elite athletes, guys who play, at the top level of their games. It's going to be really difficult. And if you think about it, Paul, if they're going to get all those games in with all those teams, you're going to have to play some day games. Looking at it, the only thing they might have going, I believe they're on Mountain Time. I mean, I don't know if they would be up for playing morning games. I mean, that's kind of what you'd be looking at. So you would start out. I mean, a 10 a.m. game would be noon on the coast, on the East Coast. I don't know if they'd be up for doing that. It'd be 11 a.m. here, so it'd be like an early college football kickoff. You kind of have to look at that, right? You'd have to think about that.
The other thing is you would with no fans, you could turn a park around and you can get 2 games in. It doesn't. And I'm not talking a doubleheader. I'm talking about you can have 4 teams. You could have 2 different sets of games in the same stadium.
Yeah, it's very true. I think it would be. I think that there's a lot. Like I said, there's a lot of options you can do. I don't know if they have a lot of ballparks around there that they could find. What I mean by that, Paul, is that there are other ballparks outside of just those spring training ballparks that they might be able to utilize. I don't know if there's, I'm trying to think of universities around. I'm blanking at the moment.
Arizona State has great facilities.
And they're not far away. I'm trying to think. I don't know why I blanked on Arizona State. Tucson's probably too far, right? My Arizona knowledge is a little bit spaced out. I've been out there 2 times. Ever.
It's a weird place because, like, you look at the map and you're like, oh wow, Scottsdale's right here and Chandler's right here and Tempe's right here, and you're like, all these things, they're all close, and then you actually drive, and then you see how far away everything is. So it's really scattered. Like, it depends if you look at the map and it's to scale or not, because everything is basically concentric around Phoenix, but it's far.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of stuff they got to take care of before that becomes. That's why I think they were dreaming of May. Very well could have. I've heard this. That it very well could have been leaked just to see what people thought of it. I think that's a possibility.
Oh yeah, I've had that theory as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a pretty strong thing. I think that's a pretty strong possibility, but we'll see. I mean, I believe in. I don't know if I buy in that sports is the ultimate healer. I think sports is a nice distraction. I think it can make people feel good. Will it heal a country? Nah, that's tough to say. There's a lot going on right now, but people could use a distraction. And
That's one of my biggest pet peeves in sports media. I really, really, really hate the take natural disaster XYZ, take, terrorist attack, take, horrifying generational event, then tie it to local team in that city winning a championship.
it's a slippery slope, I think. And you know what? And I make that kind of that thing you brew, because this has been on my mind a lot. What is the real importance of sports? I think it's somewhere between providing joy and distraction. Does it heal a community? I think it gives them something to root for. But, I was thinking about this in particular for New Orleans when the Saints returned in 2006. And then they went all the way to the championship game here in Chicago when they eventually lost. And
Right.
my thought was, there's a lot of people in the lower ninth ward. There's a lot of people who did not get, the quarter got rebuilt quickly because that has to happen. That's part of, what happens. And that's part of the things that have to go on. But for
Yeah,
somebody
it's a
who's
city's
struggling to,
identity.
yeah, but for somebody who's struggling, who doesn't have a house, who's lost things, what can a championship run be? It can be a nice distraction. It can be something for people to feel happy about. Does it heal? I think that's very much it's up to interpretation. I think it's up to interpretation. I know that there are people on the staunch far side who say that it is hyperbole. It is way out there as hyperbole. I tend to backtrack a little from that, but to say that it completely heals a community, I think is very much a broad step. I think sports plays a part, but its part is that of distraction, of bringing joy, as if you went and saw a show, as if you went and saw a television program. It brings a nice distraction. It can bring some unity, but I think as far as a complete healer, it's tough to do. America could use a distraction right now, and baseball would be a nice distraction to bring a little bit of joy. I don't think that's trying to be too hyperbolic about it. I think that that's the right thing. Sports can be that. Sports can be a distraction. It can give some people some happiness and maybe bring a little bit of unity. But is it going to heal after a pandemic where likely a lot of people are going to lose money, lose jobs, lose people and family members, lose health? It's a stretch. It's a stretch.
Well, number one, I'm glad you mentioned New Orleans because that is the first one. To me, I think that has been the media members who did this, like the most egregious offenders, the worst of it. I think we're done with because with Katrina and they won the '07, '08.
'09 '09 season Super Bowl. They would have won it in February of 2000. So that was the Colts one.
All right, so
That would
yeah,
have
so
been
that's a stretch.
February 2010.
But I mean that to me that's been the one that's been the worst of all of it. I can probably give you the worst example of this in media history, and it's a little bit obscure, but I had to bring this out because I mean it's so bad. Just I want you to prepare yourself.
I'm prepared.
I used to write for the Washington Times in like the late aughts, the early
Mm-hmm.
tens. So this must have been 2009 or 2010. Whenever the Oklahoma City Thunder reached the conference finals or the finals, there was a guy who wrote for the same website as me who linked it to healing after the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing of the federal.
That's a stretch, and I can that's a stretch. I mean, really, if you think about it, Paul, Oklahoma football, which I would assume tops everything, or Oklahoma State and Oklahoma football. Oklahoma won the 2000 national championship.
Mhm.
I would think that would top pretty much anything. I don't know. I guess I'd have to ask. I don't know much about the dynamic. I mean, I would think an Oklahoma national championship in football there would I would think it trumps everything, but I don't know.
But so then after that happened, I wrote a joke post on the Sports Bank and I said, "Thank God that we had the 2010 Chicago Blackhawks Stanley Cup and it helped us regroup and put our lives back together after the fire of 1871."
Yeah. Well, the Cubs won a World Series. What about I don't know, what 27 years after that? No, wait, 37 years. Let me think. My math's going to be 37 years. They won
Well,
36 years. 36 years later, they won the '07.
if it
The White
wasn't
Sox
for
won
the
it 35 years later.
if it wasn't for the 1993 Chicago White Sox AL West Division title, we never would have come together as a city after the Chicago River flooded in 1992.
Oh man, I remember that one. That's a funny one. You know what's funny is that Pepsi was giving away a million 12 packs of Coke. Excuse me, not of soda. I don't know why I said Coke. They were giving away like a million of them, and we got one that day. That day we got one in the mail. I don't know why I remember that
And
because
I
that's
don't understand the connection to the flood.
because the flood happened that day. So it arrived when we were talking about the flood. When what was it? I think they knocked a pylon into a tunnel and it flooded everything out.
So it's like that scene in The Cable Guy when they're at medieval times and they're like, there was no utensils in medieval times, but there was Pepsi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm just like, what does Pepsi have to do with
I
why?
just remember that day that Pepsi arrived
Oh.
that day. That just arrived that day. It's very random, but yet it's
But
everywhere.
anyway, I would say that I'm actually in total agreement with you in that sports is like a movie or a play or a night at the opera or the orchestra or a summertime concert or seeing your favorite band. It's the distraction. It's an escape for a little while. What heals the city is getting your power back, getting your home back, making sure you're financially secure. Um, you have
Mm-hmm.
the basics you need to survive, healthcare, all of that.
Yeah.
I do think there is something to, like with New Orleans. Okay, maybe a lot of the divisions that people have in New Orleans, they could come together and that they all were Saints fans.
Yeah. There's unity. I said, and I left that unity part in there. You can do that. And it does unify people and it gives somebody something to root for. Healing's a really hard word. I think it helps toward it. I don't think that it heals. It is not this blanket healing. I think that's going too far. Does it help? Sure, because it provides distraction, it provides joy. These are part of healing. That does not take it the whole way. It's not full measure. I think it's tough to say that because when you say that, it just makes it just doesn't I don't know, it doesn't feel genuine. It feels too much. I think that, let's just say the White Sox win the World Series this year. You know what? It could help Chicago into getting things back to normal. Is it going to heal everything? Probably not. But you know what? People can feel good. The White Sox fans can feel good. It brings joy and distraction. It can help to bring a little healing, but there's no way it's going to take it all away. You are not going to have this blanket healing. It's not going to do it. But what it can provide is some joy. It can help to bring unity, but unity goes so much deeper. Unity is helping people in your community. It's helping to volunteer in any way you can. It's helping to be nice to those neighbors around you so they're nice to you back. That's where healing comes in. Healing is much more local and within reach than it is to be this giant, broad thing that helps out. And people might disagree. Those in Boston might disagree after the bombing, the Red Sox. People will disagree with that, and that's fine. It's just that's how I've always kind of looked at it, trying to keep in mind the thought process of the rah rah of sport, while also the thought, maybe the kind of liberal thought that there's so much more that goes on than just sporting events. And a sporting event cannot just blanket heal everybody.
Well, one I thought was the worst application was when Michigan State went to the Final Four in Detroit in 2009, and I saw CBS started their program, their preview, by linking it to the economic crisis of '08.
I remember that. Yeah, it was very prevalent.
And I'm like, that was number one. The economic crisis was worldwide, especially national. Number two, Detroit's economic decline predated '08 and deals with all kinds of Like we could do an entire podcast about deindustrialization, globalization, outsourcing. I mean, good God, like that, it just doesn't even equate. But to me, that okay, that one maybe the Michigan State Detroit Final Four, maybe that one's almost as bad as the Oklahoma City guy. But
Yeah.
the
Not
last
just
thing I want to say about New Orleans was I think the reason that one got done so more is and played up so much is that is the only one where we actually had a disaster in which it hit home in the venue of the team
hmm
because the Superdome was a shelter for people.
Yeah. The one, like I said, it is in some ways a slippery slope, and you can get caught up in. I remember I got caught up a little bit. Detroit, but again, what would that have done for Detroit if they'd won? A
Right.
nice
Some people
distraction,
right.
a
They go to a few
smile.
bars.
Yeah, a nice smile, a distraction. But GM was going under at that point no matter what. And actually, I think GM went under, and the Red Wings lost the Stanley Cup Final Game 7 at Joe Louis. I think like either the next day or that. Would that Red Wings thing have healed everyone had they won it with GM going under? No. It would have just been a nice distraction, something for people to feel good about collectively. It wasn't going to save it.
The only economic impact you get from sports and a winning team is more people go to the park, more people go to the bars and restaurants around the park afterwards, and more people buy merchandise of the team.
hmm Yeah, that's about how you get it. And that's where, like as I said, man, it's a slippery slope. And I know that there have been writings for people on the other side of it who said that sports don't mean anything. I tend to come back from that a little bit, but I think that over hyperbole, and you can get caught up in doing that. Same thing happened with 9/11 and the Yankees. That happened too. It's part of it. You get caught up in it. It's easy to get caught up in it.
Right. Or, when
It
they took
happens.
the Super Bowl logo after 9/11 and then they made it a giant picture of the 48 contiguous states and then the New England Patriots win it. I mean, and then you're like, oh, well, hey, red, white, and blue and all that. So,
Yeah. No, it's all part of it. So, Paul, anything? Now we go to Island of Misfit Toys. Paul, anything random this week for you?
yeah, I want to talk about Zoom and Cisco WebEx. And I don't know what Zoom's parent company is, but man, do I wish I bought like a trillion shares of it in February because that is life today. That is where we're at now. And I think we're going to get to a point where we'll have to come up with new words for to focus in on a camera instead of Zoom and to go really fast because Zoom is the way this is going, it could be like I'll Facebook you, I'll Google it, let me Netflix and chill. Like Zoom could be the next verb.
Could be. And you know what, Paul? We can even stick with. I'm really interested in this because we can stick with this for the island today. I'm very curious as to what the future. And this is random. What is the future of the office now? What is the future of an office? Because people downtown Chicago, they got to pay a fortune to be buying those properties. What if these working from home works out really well? What's the future for the office?
It's interesting because when I was in business school, I came up with this idea about okay, so there's been a lot of telecommuting, there's a lot of working from home. The office is kind of disconnected. What if we created a space where people could go to work because they don't have an office and they don't want to work from home and they like the idea of, and actually that's the vision behind Starbucks. The founder, his idea was the third space, home, work, third space, which would be for a lot of people neighborhood pub. And we found that people had already come up with that. And yeah, I mean that's out there. People have been doing these office spaces where they go to get work done and everything. I mean that's a product that's been around, but now this is going to be a really strong reevaluation time. We're going to see a lot of things are going to go away. A lot of things we're going to take a long, hard look at. A lot of things are going to be reduced, and I don't know. I mean, if you look at the city map with the cases and the lowest concentration, it's all the Loop. The Loop, there's like no cases because it's mostly office and not residential.
Yeah. I'm very curious as to see how this is going to turn out. I think the whole thing, I don't know, what does this mean for social distancing? Are we going to be more distant? Are we going to become this, sort of society that people had always thought about, where we would be like a totally digital society? Some of the more sci-fi kind of things. I'm always curious if that's what is this how this becomes that. I'm really, really interesting. I'm really interested to see what's going to be part of this. I'm really interested to see what the future of an office is. What is the future of us relating to people? I still think human interaction is needed. I don't think that can go away. But how does it change now? It's really interesting. And you see Zoom, how easy Zoom is. I had never used Zoom the other day. Never used it. I set it up, had it going, and had it ready. Introduction time to learn it was about 5 minutes. That's it. It was so easy.
I'm still learning the intricacies of it, and there's some things I don't know about it yet, but it's interesting to see how fast you can pick it up and how much you can do with it.
Yeah, it's a revolution. I don't know, man. I don't know where this revolution is going to be. I don't know what is our society going to look like when this is all done. I don't know. I don't know. It's a lot of messed up things and a lot of things to go through the mind when there's not a lot to do. So it's going to be very interesting.
Well, there was on Real Time with Bill Maher, his like final closing thing, his ending segment, he did something about robosexuals where he went into all the different movies that have been about like okay, the first one I think of is Her. That's the one with Joaquin Phoenix, and he has a relationship with his operating system, which is voiced by Scarlett Johansson,
Yes, I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
and then you think about like these kids, the Gen Zs, um, they're just on Instagram and TikTok all day, and that's how they relate to each other. And for the people I do know who work at a conventional office, they slack one another when they could just get up and walk 3 feet to talk to one another.
Yeah, I don't know how that changes, man. I'm really really interested. I really don't know. It's we'll Zoom. You're right. Will Zoom become a verb? I don't know. Zoom me, which I guess
Well,
could be interpreted in a number of different ways. But I mean, that could be it. Facebook me. And that was pointed out in the Social Network movie. Facebook me. It
right.
became a saying. It became something that happened. Tweet me to a degree.
And then, taking it back a step further with business, Xerox, Kleenex, I mean, those are brand names, but they just became synonymous. Rollerblading
Hmm.
became synonymous with the product.
Here we go. There's that's a lot, man. There's a lot on the line. It's not to get scary about it, but I'm curious how society will deal with it. It should
Well,
be
okay, one
interesting.
thing, I went on a cruise once in 2002, and it wasn't my cup of tea, and I wasn't really into it, but, I talked to people about that, and hey, so people go on cruises because these things make a lot of money and they stay in business, but I never meet anyone or talk to anyone who ever says they go on cruises and they're into cruises. And now, I mean, are these cruise lines going to fold?
Yeah,
Well, like, what's going to
that
happen?
that's a good point. I mean, there have been some interesting stories of cruises turning into like camp when like the power fails or anything, or the rudder breaks, or I know nothing about boating, but or if something goes wrong on the ship, you're just kind of there. I've heard of those stories before, and I don't know what's going to become of cruise lines. People I know who do cruises have always done cruises and will always continue to do cruises. People really seem to enjoy it. So I don't know how much that'll change. Maybe you won't get as much of the casual person, like, ooh, I've always wanted to try a cruise. Maybe you don't get as many of them anymore. But I think the people who like cruises are going to do cruises. That's going to be kind of getting back to normal. I think you'd say. So I don't know if they're I think people who like cruises are gonna still do cruises, but I don't know. That's another thing that we'll have to figure out. I don't really know where that's gonna go. I've never been on a cruise. I don't really want to go on a cruise right now. I don't have a desire. It's not that I don't like cruises. Speaking of that, speaking of cruises, I wanted to look this up. I think there was actually a Penn State fan cruise featuring Sue Paterno and Franco Harris that
Yes.
left right around the time that the pandemic started. I'm
Yes.
always I'm looking at I'm curious whatever happened to it.
Yes,
It's
because
it's
it was departing like a day or two after everything got canceled, and they would not back down. They said they were going to do it. So I am interested about that.
Yeah, let me see. That I remember hearing. That was speaking of. That's the first thing that popped into my mind. But apparently they were just going to go ahead and set sail and do what they want to do. I mean, especially for some people now. I think there were people on cruises who were quarantined for a while before they were let off the boat. So I think that's a little bit treacherous for those who did it. But no, I remember hearing that. I was wondering if you had heard that too. So I was very very curious if.
I have, but we'll have to look that up and see what happened. But my cruise experience was, I felt, okay, number one, they really want to overfeed you. Like it's buffet. Like you'll get like the cruise, like the freshman 15. You'll gain weight because the belief is that you won't get seasick if you're eating more. And I don't understand. That seems like Dr. Oz kind of science to me. Like I don't know how that actually works. And then secondly, when you're visiting like islands and things and getting off the cruise, to me it's kind of like, wouldn't you want to just visit these places instead of being in, it's very very tight unless you get the highest, most gold star booking. You're in a tin can. Your rooms are tiny. It's really really cramped unless you go up like that. It's I didn't care for it. It wasn't fun.
So per the Athletic, Paul, yeah, this really happened. Yeah, the cruise went on. Yeah, it looks like the cruise went on.
Well, I did hear that Pennsylvania was going to be another COVID hotspot.
Yeah, I don't know. That's I'm curious to see. Now that Athletic article is dated the 21st. Audrey Snyder wrote it. No, it might be worth checking out. I'm just kind of doing some browsing, but it looks like yeah, it looks like everybody looks like it went forward. Uh, Jay Paterno and his family were isolated after they got back, so maybe.
Wait a minute. State College is in the middle of a landlocked mountainous. Where did this go?
Where do you? Oh, the cruise, Fort
Y-
Lauderdale. Looks like Lauderdale.
So they flew down to Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, let me see here. Let me see if it was Lauderdale. Usually they take off from Lauderdale or Key West ish. So I guess somewhere in that area, that's where they went.
Well, I'll hold my tongue because we want Penn State alumni to listen to our podcast
Well, it's
too.
interesting because I mean, it's interesting. I mean, some people have made that's a decision people are making right now. Do we want to just continue our life? I mean, there's some people who think it is. It's a tough decision. There's people who want to continue their lives and they're going to say we're going to roll the dice. It's a decision that so many people made really from 3/11 through the end of April. They're not alone in those decisions. A lot of people made the spring breakers made those decisions. People who didn't want to stay in states that didn't require them made those decisions. It's nothing out of the ordinary. They made their decisions and they had their reason to do it. So
Right, like the president of Belarus, who has said drinking vodka and going to a sauna and playing hockey will cure you of it.
yeah, I mean those are all things that everybody has their thing and everybody takes their own risk. So that's what people do, and you do. I mean you take your risk and you live with those consequences, and there can be a lot of them in the situation. It's just as I said, man, crazy time. So
Well, maybe on our next podcast we'll actually get into really deep, thought-provoking topics.
We will. There's a lot of them. It's been kind of for me, it's been a slow about 10 days here figuring out how to take this time of working from home. It's been a weird time. But for another podcast, we'll do that. And then at that point, I think we'd be about a month in. So that actually would be a good one for next week. But Paul,
Right,
one
we're
more
asking
sip.
the big questions.
Yeah. Paul, one more sip. Final thought.
Um, I think I did take notes on this, but I would say my final thought is right now we're chronicling history. This is our diary. This is going to be what it was like to live in the COVID-19 pandemic. And like when I shoot video of me throwing tennis balls into Otis's cat tower as a way of playing Papa Shot, or late at night I'll go in the hallway and I've got cups and some tennis balls and I'm gonna take a bat and I'm gonna start putting and stuff and be like, these are the things people did to stay sane and to keep themselves occupied under quarantine.
Yeah.
And
We
everything
what?
we're talking about here, this uncertain world, we'll look back on this later.
Yep. It's the quarantine chronicles or the of the Brew review. It's funny. It's funny that our first taping was on 3/11, basically as it all went down.
It's
But
amazing. It was like the last bit of normalcy.
mm-hmm.
We got our last taste of normal life, and then it just all. The day began with the St. Patrick's Day parades being canceled. It ended with Tom Hanks being diagnosed and isolated. And I remember saying in the studio when we recorded, like, what are we gonna do if we're all isolated and we're all cut off? And half the people in that room were kind of like, yeah, that's a possibility. And I think the other half of the people in the room were like, yeah, whatever. What are you talking about? But
Yeah, it was it was weird. I mean, we went to Adams Street Brewery, and then I went to Great Central Brewing for a fundraiser, and that was so basically when I was at the fundraiser, the NBA I think it was Tom Hanks got diagnosed, then Rudy Gobert got diagnosed along with Donovan Mitchell, and they postponed the NBA season or paused it or suspended it. And the Blackhawks are playing 4 blocks away, and I'm like, that's the last game they're going to play for a while. And 24 hours later, all the sports leagues are canceled. So I knew when I was in there having the beers, I'm like, this is the last one I'm going to have out for a while. I thought about having one on St. Patrick's Saturday. I took one look at the bars, and I'm like, I'm going to be irresponsible and walked away.
right,
That's the last time I rode the L, Paul.
it
I
was
haven't ridden the L
Saturday.
in a month. I haven't ridden the L since that night. On 3/11, I rode the L that night to go home. That's the last time.
I know that I drove for the last time on March 7th to cover the Northwestern Penn State game. My last L trip would have been up to Evanston on March 10th or 9th to pick up my parking pass for the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, and that's it. That's the last time. Now, I'm right next to the L, and I haven't been on it in a month. It's a little weird. I went on the bus once. Wait, no, that would be no. I was on the bus a couple of times to go to work before we worked from home. I went to go pick up my computer. I think I'm on the bus about 3 or 4 times since then, maybe. That's it. That is it.
So then the next logical question is what is it going to be like to get on the L, to get on the bus, to do all these things in May, June, July, whatever, when we get the all clear?
It'll be awesome. Normal will never feel so good.
Very true. I mean, I remember us raising a glass at Adams Street Brewery that night, and um, we kind of knew the world was ending at that point, but we were I don't think we really actually knew the world was ending at that point.
I think we still had hoped that there would be a tournament. We knew there'd be no fans. we knew that it was about to hit. But I think
Right.
that wasn't. I think the idea of really being a sheltered in place as we are was probably not what we were thinking. That was a surprise. I think that would have been a little bit of a surprise. But I think, it's funny what you accept as reality and what you accept. By the time that we had the shelter in place, I was rooting for it. I felt like it took out the indecision that I had about even walking around or, it just took that out. I really felt like the best thing was just to go ahead and do it because the sooner you did it, the sooner you can get out of it.
Well, I
So,
completely agree. I completely agree. I mean, I remember seeing last week tonight with John Oliver his first coronavirus segment showing China, and a talking mechanical box comes to your door and says, "Do not leave your house." And
yeah,
then he's showing, people walking outside in T-Rex costumes because it's the closest thing they have to a hazmat suit and trying to cope with it. And here we are.
yeah, here we are. I mean, it's so fast, but
And yet it's our new normal, and yet we adjusted.
and we adjusted fine. So we'll see, man. Um, for my last sip, I what I always wanted people to say was, for me, there's a lot of people debating what is too negative when it comes to projections, what is too positive, and my urge is to find somewhere in the middle. I think it's really important that we be able to manage reality and hope at this time. I think it's really important because we can look at things right now and say, my God, we may not have anything for a year. We could be locked down for a year. We may not have sports till Thanksgiving, as I know one of the health directors, I believe, out in Santa Clara County, out in California, said. And that's all possible. But I think that there are other ways that sports and life can get going again, that with social distancing, with a few adjustments, we can kind of start to get back to normal if we kind of rally around things right now. I guess for me, the key is, is finding that right blend of pessimism and optimism and trying to set realistic goals for the time. For the whole time I've watched a lot of videos and I'm like, should I be learning to cook? Should I be learning to sew? Should I be learning to play piano? Should I be drinking beer every day? Should I just be lazy? Should I just sleep all the time? And I always said that you kind of find the middle ground and you have to focus on your mind. Sometimes, Paul, the only thing that we have to do to be a good person is stay at home and stay sane. This isn't necessarily about, oh, I'm going to make myself the greatest person in the world or I'm going to do everything I wanted to do. But the key right now is staying sane. The key right now is doing what you can do simply to help out others. I think it's managing your expectations with reality, balancing the positive and the negative. These are all things we have to do right now. And I think that's something that I've been switching my mind to start thinking about. And I hope people are doing well with it. There's it's kind of a struggle at times, but we get through.
Right. The process of isolation and quarantine doesn't have to. This isn't a movie. This isn't some Bildungsroman, some coming of age story where you find some self realization that you never could before. And it's not even the people who say, well, I would do this and I would do that if I had the time. And then you get here and you don't. No, it's not about that. It's about other generations were asked to go to war. We're asked to go to our couch. And
Mm-hmm.
how do you go to your couch and make sure your body and your mind stay fit?
Yep, that's what it is. Keep your mind strong. Paul, another awesome episode, man. It's been great.
I think this is my best episode yet, but I
It
will
might
say
be.
that I am really looking forward to the time when we can do this together and we can do it from my pool upstairs or your balcony or just when summer's here outside. It's going to be so much better, but I think this is our best episode yet.
It was, man. I enjoyed it. Thanks for joining, Paul. I appreciate it, man.
Thank
That's
you.
Paul. That's Paul M. Banks. I'm Larry Hawley. Thank you for joining Balcony Brew Review number 3 in shelter in place. Remember, stay safe, stay positive, and please stay at home.